So I went back and forth on what my title should be for this talk, and I thought about things like what I did on my summer break. But settled with Cashmere's Appalachian Trail Thru-Hike, and a few people have already asked what is Cashmere, so I will be addressing that later in the talk. And so this picture here is the morning that I started, and I'm in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, at the Appalachian Trail Conservancy main office there, and they take your picture and they give you a number. I was number 97. I started on May 9th. So I gave my organic chemistry final exam on May 8th at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my son drove me to the airport, and by noon I was on an airplane grading papers on the plane. I got to Harpers Ferry and used my smartphone to put the grades in the computer. And the next day I started hiking. So I cut it kind of close. So just a little bit of information about the trail. The trail goes from Georgia to Maine, or Maine to Georgia, depending on your point of view. It goes through 14 states. For 2015, the trail was 2,189.2 miles. That changes a little bit each year. Seems to get longer each year. They sometimes will have land donated, so they'll reroute the trail to go through donated land. Sometimes they'll go in and add in what are called switchbacks, which will make the trail a little bit longer. But it seems to increase a couple of miles per year. And the elevation change is quite extensive there, 917,760 feet of elevation change. So that's like 420 feet elevation change per mile. So not a lot of flat, a lot of up and down. And this is a map of the Appalachian Mountains, and the trail pretty much runs right along the ridge there, all the way from Georgia to Maine. So I'm going to go over a few terms. The first term is thru-hiking. Thru-hiking is the process of hiking a long-distance trail during a 12-month period. Some people like to do it in a calendar year, but also some people start in November and will go into the next year. As long as it's within 12 months, then it is considered a thru-hike. For trails that go northbound, north to south or south to north, we have some other terminology. So on the Appalachian Trail, if you're hiking northbound, you're referred to as a nobo. And a nobo is a person that hikes from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Katahdin, Maine in a continuous journey. If you're hiking southbound, people will call you a sobo. And a sobo hikes from Katahdin, Maine to Springer Mountain, Georgia in a continuous journey. Now, most nobos start around March or April in Georgia, and this allows them to finish at Mount Katahdin by mid-October. Mount Katahdin typically gets snowed in later in October, and they close the mountain, so if you don't get there before the snow, then you can't finish your thru-hike. Southbounders, on the other hand, have to wait for the snow to disappear on Mount Katahdin. And this is typically mid-June, so around June 15th. Neither one of these formats worked very well for me because I needed to start May 9th or May 8th, and I needed to be finished, or at least on the southern end, in case I had to go back to work before I finished. And so I didn't want to start sobo because I would have to wait till around June 15th. And I didn't want to go nobo because that would mean that I would be in Maine, and if I cut it too close, I wouldn't be able to finish. So I did a flip-flop thru-hike. So a flip-flop thru-hiker completes part of the trail as a nobo and the other part as a sobo. So if we look at the map again, I started in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, which is right here. Flew into Washington, D.C. and caught a train to Harpers Ferry, and then hiked north and summited at Mount Katahdin in Maine on July 9th. And so that took approximately 2 months. Then I flew from Bangor, Maine, back to Washington, D.C., caught a train to Harper's Ferry, and then I headed south to Springer Mountain, Georgia. And so that was my route. The 2014 Thru-Hiker stats, they don't have the 2015 yet because people are still hiking, look like this. 2,864 people attempted a Thru-Hike. 799 completed their Thru-Hike, so approximately a 28% completion rate. And that's fairly typical. And if you look at that 28%, usually it's somewhere between 24 and 28%. About 25% of those are women, and the other 75% are men. The average length of time to complete a Thru-Hike was 5.5 months. I didn't have 5.5 months because I only had summer semester. And so I had 95 days where I was trying to complete the trail. So a little bit, right around 3 months. I ended up completing it, but I had to add in a few weekends. So my total number of days was 114 days. And so that had me at just a little bit under 20 miles a day that I averaged. Trail names. A trail name is a nickname adopted by or given to a hiker. This name is used almost exclusively when communicating with others on the trail and in trail register entries, books that you write that you were there. On the trail, someone will do something, make a mistake, do something that's a little bit odd, and people will name you for it. So my trail name is Cashmere. Actually was given to me by a trail running friend. I run a lot on trails, and when I was running along with the group, it was like a 60-degree day and everybody else looked pristine, and I was sweaty. And so they commented that I sweated a lot, and I just kind of was like, well, yeah, I'm a sweater. I come from a long line of sweaters. I think it is a genetic thing in my family. And so they said they were going to call me Cashmere because I could cashmere sweater. So I went home and I thought, that could be my trail name. So I looked it up, and on Wikipedia, not an official source, I won't reference it, it said that Cashmere had a strong tensile strength yet soft to the touch. And I thought, oh, that's actually really good. And so Cashmere became my trail name. Some other trail names: Twisted, Pa Bert, Fireball, we can imagine where that came from. Full Moon, you might imagine where that one came from. Loon, Pilgrim, Badger, Left Turn, I think she got lost a lot. Sunshine, who was very happy all the time. Skittles was a guy that ate Skittles a lot. Wired, Umbrella Man, carried an umbrella. Mother Teresa, Dog Whisperer, he hiked with his dog. Mammoth, and then Cookie Monster. Cookie Monster ate a lot of cookies. So each name has a story behind it. All right, so let's look a little bit at the trail. This is day one. I'm in Harper's Ferry, and I'm getting ready to head north. And a nice gentleman there offered to take my picture at the sign. So I'm all smelling good and clean there. My equipment's clean. It didn't stay that way for long. So on the trail, there are these white blazes on the trees or on rocks or wherever they can put them. They're 2 inches by 6 inches, and that is the trail marker for the Appalachian Trail. And so we say we follow the white blazes. And you can see that this part of the trail here is very flat, very walkable. You can, if you look carefully, there's another white blaze off in the distance, I believe on that tree there. So nice flat trail. This is rather unique. Most of the trail doesn't look like this. But some of it does, and we enjoy it when it does. A lot of the trail looks like this. And so this is in Pennsylvania, which is known for its rocks. And so you can see the white blaze there. And essentially, that is the trail. It goes out through there. I didn't have a lot of bad weather or rain on the trail, but that was about the second day of a 2-day period where there was a lot of rain. And if it's raining, you still pack up and you hike. And so there I am with my raincoat, getting ready to go across the wet rocks. Sometimes the trail goes through fields, and so we can see the white blaze here. There's also a white blaze there, so the trail, if I remember, kind of went around in an arc and went that direction. And you hike so much in the woods. The Appalachian Trail is actually known as the Green Tunnel, that when you come out into these fields, it's actually really nice. Unless you're in Tennessee and it's 95 degrees and humid, in which case the trees are nice. Here's a shot from New Hampshire. This is on the Franconia Ridge, and the trail comes from here and actually goes up, goes down a little bit, and then goes up on this ridge here. So this is above tree line, and you're above tree line for about 5 to 10 miles in that region. Gorgeous views, just incredible views. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the different terrain that you see on the trail. There's a few more that I could have thrown in there, but I wasn't sure about time. So moving on to shelters. There are shelters built on the trail approximately every 8 miles. And a lot of people schedule their hikes to go from shelter to shelter. And so this is an example of a shelter in Pennsylvania. Just a little wooden structure. What makes it a shelter versus a cabin is one side needs to be open. This is about as closed in as they get. Here is people sleeping inside the shelter. This is Rainbow. Rainbow is a section hiker, and section hikers hike the whole trail, but they do it in longer than 12 months. Oftentimes they'll take like a month every summer and go out and hike. And this is Freeball. She's starting college this year, so she decided to hike the trail between high school and college. And this is Badger, and he actually had just finished up college, and this was what he was going to do before he got a job. And so you can get a span. Rainbow is probably in her 50s or early 60s. And so once you're out there on the trail, age doesn't matter. Your best friend will be 18 or they may be 70. Everybody, there's an equalizing effect with age. That particular shelter would only hold about 6. Some of them will hold up to 14, 15 people. Some of them you sleep on the floor. Others, as I'll show you in just a bit, will have wooden bunks. Okay, and this is just a nice view of Walnut Mountain Shelter. So you can see that's a common setup of a shelter. There'll be a little picnic table or somewhere to sit, oftentimes a fire ring, and then the little shelter. Picnic table is not always there. And it's miles away from the road, so to get a picnic table in there, oftentimes they have to do something like fly it in or backpack in the parts and then put it together there. This shelter, I just thought this was kind of fun. So it's a double shelter. And if you look, I don't know if you can see it or not, right here there's a little sign, and it says snoring. And this one over here had a complimentary sign that said no snoring. And so the advantage to the double shelter is you could divide it up on whether you snored or not.
What about those who snore but say they don't?
I don't know. I don't know. So I only stayed in the shelter 3 nights. I didn't particularly care for the shelters. Part of the reason is that people do snore. They were crowded. If you had to get up and use the restroom in the middle of the night, you had to figure out how to not be viewable. Again, that trail name Full Moon was somebody that didn't quite make it. Also, there are a lot of animals around the shelters. People, unfortunately, will drop food and maybe not meaning to. And so mice, especially in the south, will live in the shelters. Hundreds of mice. So I did not stay in a shelter in the south. I tried one night when it was raining, and as soon as it stopped raining, I set up my tent. I got out of there. In this area, which this was northern Pennsylvania, the critters that would bother the shelters were the porcupines. And they actually like gnawing on the wood. So if you look right here, it looks like it's been gnawed on. The porcupines will actually come in the shelter while you're sleeping and start gnawing on the wood. And it did that night. But it was raining and I was happy to be there. Just a little bit about that night and the people on the trail. There were 4 of us in that shelter that night. There was me, a PhD chemist. In the other bunk was Pa Burt, who was a retired chemical engineer. On the bunk above me, it was a high school chemistry teacher. And then on the other bunk was his daughter, who was getting her PhD in computer science at Brown University. It was a very well-educated shelter. And that's actually not uncommon. It is amazing how many scientists I met on the trail and engineers. This was my preferred mode of sleeping. I slept in my tent on the top of mountains 95% of the time. I typically camped by myself and did what they call stealth camping. I would just get to where I was ready to stop and I'd start looking for a flat place to put my tent. Doing that, I had awesome views. Also, it was less likely that animals or people would bother you. I made sure that I slept at least a couple of miles from the road, just in case somebody was wanting to harm somebody. They're not going to be looking where people don't normally camp. And so this was one of my safety precautions. I hiked alone. It was a solo hike. Although I met a lot of people and hiked with people during the day, it was solo. And so that was one of the things you can do when you're solo to make sure that people don't bother you or animals don't bother you. I had no problems camping. And you get views like this. So most nights I slept with my rain fly open so that I could look out. Unless it was cold or rainy, I always had my window open. And I woke up so many mornings to views like this and went to sleep to views like this. It was really awesome.